Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of the Panachecast. Pete and I are delighted to be joined today by Catherine Bamford. We had the good fortune to see Catherine speaking at the 2019 Legal Geek Conference about document automation, which is a subject close to Pete and my heart. We've started our own journey through document automation and gone on from there. So finally, people can hear somebody other than just Pete and I talking about document automation.
That's always an improvement, yeah.
So welcome to the show, Catherine. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. We always like to start by asking a little bit about you, because document automation is what you're a large part of what you're known for now, but that hasn't always been the case, has it? You've got a background to tell, so tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I guess quick summary of how I got to where I am now. So started off life as a real estate lawyer, similar to yourself, and that was at Pinson's. And when the last recession hit in 2008, Pinson's very cleverly, rather than just making lots of people redundant, they put everyone onto the kind of KPMG model of the 4-day week, but they took one person from each department and put them on an internal secondment. And asked them to look at ways their own teams could become more efficient. So how we could all work in a better way. And I was chosen to be one of those people for real estate. So doing a lot of investment work, like leases, licenses, etc., high volume, fixed fee, all that sort of stuff. One of the first things we thought, okay, this is something that could help our team, was document automation. So Pinson Masons went on to buy Contract Express, and I was the person that learned how to use it. Inner geek came fully out of the closet, as I say often, and really enjoyed it. Took off really well. Junior lawyers just found it helped them so much, used to use, and then other departments started to show interest. So I approached the firm and I said, look, rather than me going back to being a fee-earning lawyer, can I do this firm-wide as a job? And they were like, are you sure you don't want to be a lawyer anymore? And I'm like, no, absolutely, really enjoying this and can see that it's something that's really going to help. And then, started doing that for them. That then became bigger. We integrated it with other stuff. We got lots more people involved. That became the smart delivery team. And then 3 years later, team was there, all working as business as usual. Other law firms started asking me, can you come help us? And enough of them started asking me that I thought there's a business here. So that's when I set up BamLegal to help other firms.
And ventured into the world of working for yourself. And
exactly, yeah.
How was that transition? Did you find that easy, or?
A lot of people always say, "Oh, you're so brave, going out on your own." But actually, there wasn't a huge risk at the time. Yes, I had bought a house, but I'd lasted through the recession without losing it, so that was okay. But I didn't really have any other risks, and I just thought, well, worst case scenario, I don't get booked, I don't get any clients, I'll just find another job. I think as lawyers we're a little bit too cautious, a little bit too scared of failure. But I think if you always think, what's the worst case scenario, and you can live with that, then crack on.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, you mentioned that Pinson's bought Contract Express and that you were dealing with that. I find a lot of firms seem to have specialists that know the software rather than having the lawyers do it themselves. How did they arrive at that decision, or how was it?
Well, obviously, I was a lawyer that learned to use it, but the one of the guys that worked there at the time, one of the original, because this was when it wasn't Thomson Reuters, it was Business Integrity. One of the original guys, Richard Newton, he I think the partners that looked into it and procured it, he said, look for your lawyers that kind of have that slight OCD side, the ones that love Sudoku rather than literature. And I was very much known for, this was in the days where we still had paper files. And I was very much known for, I come out in hives. If someone doesn't use the bit on their hole punch so that all the pages line up in the file, that literally makes me come out like this. So I like that kind of attention to detail. So I think that's why I was chosen. So I was a lawyer. They also, we had 2 professional support lawyers, more modernly now known as knowledge lawyers. Hate the word support in that context. And a senior associate as well. So the 4 of us actually worked together. but yeah, we quickly saw that it would become a full-time thing, and we couldn't see how someone could do it around their day job.
I think these things turn into, or people don't really realize how much work can be involved in this, and especially when you're having to learn the systems yourself as well and get up to speed on that, this isn't always something that you can just fit around the day job.
Yeah, and all softwares, not just document automation softwares, but pretty much all of the document automation software, especially the new ones coming out where they're like it's low code, no code, but also all of the kind of collaboration platforms, all of the kind of the more search, what people refer to as the AI tools. Yes. They're all saying, oh, your lawyers can do this. And yes, the lawyers could learn to do it, of course, but I think they oversell that point. And it means that when people are doing the business case and the plan about bringing technology into their law firm, they forget to do the resource bit, and they forget to plan that. So then they buy it thinking it's this magical thing that they'll just open the box and suddenly everything will be done. And they forget there's going to be hard work and time involved. And, especially with the lawyers being on billable hours and having targets, it's too difficult.
We definitely found that with things like you mentioned, the AI solutions and stuff like that. People are buying these, products which are designed to scan through contracts to pick out terms and things like that. And I think people are buying them assuming that they just turn it on and it works, and don't understand that a lot of these AI solutions and stuff need training and things like that themselves. You need to introduce those software solutions to your documents, the type of things you're looking for. They don't just work out of the box. So you've got to take that into account when you're
completely. I had a great chat with Samir Patel at Holland and Knight last week, and he was showing me a product that they have, and what they did was all of their summer interns, 50% of their week was going through the contracts, putting in the data points, and then training them. And what was great about that was that those interns were getting to look at meaty contracts and learn what are the essential points and what bits do you need. And obviously they then got that resource to put in as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's get back just to the early days of document automation a little bit. Pete and I have worked on different bits of document automation before, from the simple form filling to the much, much more complicated Contract Express, hot docs type tools that will do huge facility agreements, big leases, which you will have seen in your days in private practice. My experience is sometimes that people think they have to go for the biggest and best. Maybe they jump at something like a Contract Express because it's Thomson Reuters, they can't go wrong. But they've
got the name behind it, the brand behind it.
Yeah, like you can't go wrong buying IBM or so, whatever that phrase was. But what are the different tools? What are the options for people? How should they look at document automation? Should they look at their own practice first?
Yeah, absolutely. It totally depends on the type of law firm, and also each department can have different needs. It also, so things like a corporate SPA.
Yeah.
There is a lot you can do to automate that just by asking 10 questions. So you can eliminate almost 400 sets of square brackets just by asking single seller, multi-seller, split exchange and completion, lockbox, completion accounts, that kind of thing. Subsidiaries or not, that's a huge one. So you don't need a tool as sophisticated as Contract Express to do that. So it's very much thinking, what's your quick wins? What are the benefits, the outcomes you want to get? Because there's a lot of tools out there now that you might not be able to do the extra complex stuff, like producing an entire suite of many documents at a time, or all of the shareholders' assets in a table format. Tables are quite difficult for a lot of the softwares to get right. But you might not need to, and the cost differential is huge. Like some of the new ones coming out now, you're not paying anywhere near what the likes of Contract Express, Hot Docs, Exari are charging. There's also other new software is coming out now where what we were talking about earlier, the resource problem, there's ones like Claralist where they're offering that for you. So they do everything for you. They give you the kind of knowledge lawyer bit as well. So you really don't just look at what don't just look at what's the best software, because if you look at that, you're pretty much just going to find the one that's sold the most to the most law firms. So you've got to look very much at your use case, your users, your budget, your potential constraints, etc.
I mean, it's quite often the case that the best software is often determined to be the one that's the most expensive. That must therefore be the best. But I mean, I know you've had experience with using things like Docassemble, which is open source and free. You can just use it. I mean, there might be some more technical aspects to getting that up and running in a practice, but those options are there, aren't they? That you can just
exactly. And so Docassemble, open source. And it's based, so you will need someone that understands Python to build things for you, working with your lawyers. But to get a lawyer to stop fee earning to do the programming for you costs quite a lot. You could get 4 Python developers maybe to work with a lawyer, working 1 or 2 hours with them to do the same thing. So in terms of scale, that's all there. And it's really worth looking into Docassemble, just doing some fantastic stuff in the access to justice space. And I think we will see more of that. And I'd love to see more companies use it for commercial purposes, obviously giving back everything they learned in the open source collaborative way, because I think that will really start to make the large incumbent software companies sit up a bit and pay a bit more attention. So for example, if you were to look at Contract Mill, which is a really nice tool out of Finland, their team currently is 5. So you're going to get such a personal service and so much more help when you're doing it. And that's the same with anything. As it scales, harder to give that personal service.
And also that, the personal service also means that the speed of change can be greater on these things, because you're not weighed down by that big client base that you have to support. Absolutely. And that legacy software that's there that has to be maintained.
Exactly.
So, I mean, once you've looked at the tools that are available and what's out there, and thought, okay, we're going to bite the bullet and actually go do this, and you've got people in to help you actually build these documents. I mean, what do you find that the kind of adoption rate in the law firm is like? Quite often you find companies will introduce new tools, new ways of doing things, and they're used initially, but then people eventually go back to doing things the old way because actually they find it easier. Do you find the uptake of the stuff is, does get used and going forwards?
I think with document automation done right, yes. I think they won't go back to doing it the old way. The analogy I always use is when you have people that are a bit scared of it and don't want to use it, and they're like, do I need training? I'm like, no. Can you book flights online? Can you order something off Amazon? Okay, then you can use this. So don't be scared. We're literally just making where you're answering questions saying, do you need a rent review? Yes. If so, how much? And you're just filling that in online. So the lawyers will use it, and I've had lawyers that have moved firms from a firm that's had software where they've done all their automated drafting to a firm that doesn't, and they're like, it's so hard to go back to doing it the old way. You literally are tearing your hair out thinking, this is taking so long, this is awful. But I think there's been some great successes, and there's been even more failures when implementing document automation in terms of buy-in and scaling it quickly and getting return on investment for what you've paid for the software. And I think the biggest mistake that people make, apart from resource, but we've mentioned that already, so you've got to get the right person to do it, is starting too big. So, well, to give you examples, so at DWF, they just started with a 6-week pilot for 3 departments only in one jurisdiction, actually just in one office. So it was the Manchester office in the UK. And they chose employment, commercial, so something quite simple like an NDA or something, an employment contract. And then because they knew the argument would come back from certain partners when they asked for investment of, well, of course you can use it for employment or simple things like NDAs, but you can't use it for my complex department. Yeah. We also did do a share allotment suite for corporate as well. By doing that in such a bite-sized way, so small, we were able then to get just, I think it was maybe like 10 fee earners in each team to just test what we'd done. And we saved all of their feedback. And then in the business case, and then when we rolled it out, we were doing a lot of, they were very good at internal comms. So they use Yammer, for example. We would put the quote. So 4-year PQE associate says, this is amazing. It saved me an hour and a half. Can't wait to use it more. Yeah. So that, what I refer to as like the butterfly effect, really helps, but definitely start small. If we try to do, so one of my biggest failures, and I'll put my hands up and say failures, was a large global firm. I went in and I said this, I was like, butterfly effect. We need to start one department, one jurisdiction, get the good feedback, then grow and scale it out. Because lawyers listen to other lawyers rather than listening to someone like me talk to everyone and say, you all have to have this. If they have one lawyer in one department going, this is amazing, you should try it, that will spread. And I talked about this butterfly effect. And this particular gentleman, it was very much, I don't believe in this butterfly effect. We need to go global straight away. We need one document for every department so that everyone can get their hands on it, which, valid thing. But it was just like, I've seen that not work before.
End goal dream, really. But
yeah, exactly. End goal dream. And also by doing one document for each department in each jurisdiction, it meant that no one got return on investment. It was very diluted. Yeah. So they might have one thing, but it's like, that's not going to really get anyone any big savings. So what we were able to do with at Pinson's, we just started in real estate, and what we were able to do was say, by using this for the last 6 months, we have saved X number of hours.
Yeah.
And then that makes the banking partner interested.
Yeah. That's great. And Pete, you said to me before about it, we needn't necessarily have one document to rule them all. And in my case, I've seen examples of needing a one-page document with just the parties filled in at the front, at the simplest end. Maybe that would be a board minute or something in a corporate transaction, to then doing the SPA. And the tools required to do those two things are quite different. How long it takes to do them is quite different. And if you're trying to cram everything into one place, it might not necessarily work. Take leases, for example, where we might be saying, I want a lease of whole or a lease of part, or their industrial building, or it's a commercial building or a retail building, whatever. There are some times when you can put that into one thing, potentially. And yes, I'll be interested to see your 10 questions, if we could have a look at those, to see how that would work. But maybe if you're just getting started and you're using one of the simpler and cheaper technologies, you could just say, well, question one will be, what type of document is it I want? And then it could just go to a different document.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. There is one law firm I know about. I'm not sure who it is, so I'm not going to. Yeah, I'm not quite sure who it is, but I know that they're using, for example, one software in the corporate department, another software in like banking and real estate and something else, and then they're using another software. They're using Avoca for their client-facing work. So you don't have to buy. Also, less and less are the large incumbents offering what they used to in terms of enterprise-wide. And I think that's because of how much activity there is at the moment with law firms merging and buying each other and everything else. So it's very difficult now to get enterprise-wide. So you are paying, most of the time, you're paying per user license model.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that may be a prohibition against full adoption, and I guess for some firms, won't it? That's one of the things which I've always wondered. How if at the expensive range you're using it for the big ticket deals, you may well be pricing yourself out of using it for the real grind work, where actually the automation is even more important potentially, and you'll find other savings. So
yeah. Also for in-house, the per user model doesn't work, in my opinion. So for in-house law firms, often why they want automated systems and document automation is to allow their business to self-serve. So they need licenses for, so say they wanted their salespeople to be able to fill in the key information that it automatically generated the contracts for legal.
Yeah.
Rather than just paying for a license for each of the lawyers in the in-house legal department, they're going to have to pay for licenses for these salespeople that are maybe only going to use it once or twice a year.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. And that's where a lot of the new startups compared to the incumbents are winning on the in-house market, because they've got more interesting pricing models.
Different pricing models. And, we're talking about, we've been talking primarily about document automation and stuff and how that gets introduced. But normally along with that, there's so much other new technology coming out there and stuff. I mean, what trends are you seeing as to where people are looking for other solutions and what else they can do? Is there anything that is top of everyone's list at the moment to get involved with?
So really popular at the moment is this idea of like legal front door. So Adelshaw Goddard's just announced and released theirs last week. I know there's been a big thing that Deloitte Legal, who I've recently been working with, they've just done a series for their GCs where they had a whole evening that was all about legal front door. So it's creating platforms to help your clients to see all their matters, triage everything that's coming through from their business, and then go on and work through. Obviously, document automation traditionally has only been one step of any transaction. So it's at the point you would draft a document, you then do it. So what people are looking for now is more the end-to-end workflow, things that will piece in and out, and very much, obviously, whether that's right or not in terms of how well law firms are using technology. People are looking for stuff that will get them the big PR story and win them an award and that kind of thing, which generally is they want to use the words artificial intelligence, they want to use the word blockchain, that kind of thing. The reality in the law firms is that being used very, very little, and the AI is still being used just for search and extraction. And I say just, that's still awesome.
It's still a big part, but
yeah. So the type of thing that's coming up more that's really nice is like the extraction, and then automatically feeding that into the documents, and then also the saving of the information to then show trends to be able to give information back to the clients.
Yeah, that's interesting. We've heard, haven't we, Pete, and we've said before many times about having to say you're involved in AI just to save the current, and that you've got skin in the game seems to be very popular. And
I think for the LegalTech as well, like you're going to say, to get funding and stuff for some of these legal startups and things, they have to say that.
It's really dangerous though, and it's unfortunate because there's still so much to be, and this is why I'm quite on board with the Jan Justine and the Alex Smith and the everyone else, push for back to basics, because the percentage is all skewed. So people are spending maybe like 80% of their time looking at shiny new things that are coming into the future that'll get them the, they'll be able to say they're using it, get them the attention, the PR story. And they're spending maybe 20% of the time looking at what they're currently doing, how to improve it, and how to actually just do what they're doing currently better with tools they already have, rather than spending more money. And in my mind, it should always be, you should be spending about 70% of your time on improving what you currently do, 20% time on additional features and added value, and 10% of the time on disrupting yourself. Any industry, that's kind of the proportion that you should be doing. And I think that people have got it the wrong way around in law at the moment, which is detrimental.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. And I don't know what the figures are or the statistics are, but I imagine that an AI feature is probably useful for a lot of the big law firms, not so useful for a lot of the smaller law firms. And the majority of the market, I imagine, is made up of firms that really don't need that much AI, I would imagine. So,
and like, what are we talking about? Like, what would you actually say AI in legal is?
Yeah.
I have no idea. We
We're looking at due diligence search and perhaps predictive kind of analytics, predictive outcomes cases.
Mm.
People aren't talking about use cases enough.
No.
They just go, oh, we're using AI. And it's like, well, what for? And if you're just doing it for due diligence, great. That's so much better than having a team of paralegals working through the night to pull out key bits of data from a set of contracts.
Yeah.
But say that that's what you're doing. Don't try and make it some magic thing that's confusing everyone and making everyone else go off and spend hundreds of thousands of pounds when they could probably get, just by, there's a lot of stuff just by kind of very simple processes and checklists. You could really improve your margins so much more by looking at the basics and doing the hard yards. It's just that it's not sexy.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about process improvement, don't repeat, and about just eliminating the wastes. And, there's lots of good stuff about that out there. And there's lots of free tools. And like you say, just looking at your own work pattern, there are many ways without spending a lot of money on a tech solution necessarily that you can improve what you're doing. And hopefully that will encourage people, if they do that first, to really, where they're limited in what they can spend, to really spend it in the right place, because they'll know their business like the back of their hand. Yeah. I'd like to ask, if I can, a little bit more about, you mentioned a firm or organization out in Finland, a small five-person firm, and the smaller people generally. How are you finding that they get on getting into the big firms, the big in-house team, or gaining traction with their product?
Yeah.
Talk about the successful ones of those, and then what others like them might do to get into the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm just trying to think, how did I meet Contract Mill? So I think possibly I met the founders at maybe like a Women in Law event or something like that. What's quite interesting about them is they're one of very few, unfortunately, legal tech companies that was founded by females. I then saw the product, how to play with it. I probably then mentioned it, that kind of thing. They then... They did stuff like the Legal Geek Startup Alley, where they demoed to lots of people on that. They applied for a number of incubators. Now, I know the jury's out on incubators, and a lot of people think it's law firms just trying to get PR by working with these startups. Yes, it is. But every startup I've spoken to that's been part of one have got so much out of it, in terms of you get really good user testing straight away, you get access to the lawyer straight away, you get the benefit of that PR that the law firm's going to be putting out anyway. So yeah, there's a lot of skeptics of them, and I think choose your incubator correctly. But I don't see any huge negatives of those, to be honest. And I think the skeptics are maybe, I don't know, just going a bit too far. I think it's never going to hurt to get closely in front of your potential users.
Yeah. Well, we had Ed on, didn't we, from Audible Witness a few weeks ago, Pete? And he's a big fan of the incubation, and I think he said that the product Audible Witness wouldn't be what it is today without the input from people, and probably wouldn't work in the way that it does.
They were at MishCons, right? MDR Labs.
He was at MDR Labs, and I think they were.
One.
Yeah, I think they were at MDR Labs when they just had an idea as well. They didn't even have the product at that point. It was just we think we can do this, and they were as part of the MDR Labs thing.
Yeah.
It gave them that leg up, and I think you're right. I think some of the problems with the incubators is they're very isolated to the big firms. Only the big firms can get involved in it, because only the big firms can afford to run those kind of things. But for the startups themselves involved in those incubators, then it gives them that step up, and gets them going.
Yeah.
The main bit of advice I would give to startups is know your USP, know your unique selling point, because I take maybe like 4 to 5 demos a week, and I always say, who's your biggest competitor? And then I say, what's your biggest differentiator? And the number that tell me their differentiator, and I think, well, that's not true, because I can think of 20 that do that, is really annoying. So doing your due diligence and coming up with your differentiators, Contract Mail, something that I really liked about them was they had this kind of different kind of level of package. So they had what they called a free widget. So that idea of your business needing to use it. So your lawyers would have a license, but then your business users need to use it. Or client facing. So you as a law firm want to put it on your website so someone can just generate something for free as like a leader, kind of. So you had like Latham and Watkins Drive, for example, where if you were a startup in San Francisco, you can go on, you can generate all your incorporation documents in one go for free. But then the hope is that if you become the next Facebook, you'll use Latham as your lawyers. And they had this thing, which I hadn't seen anywhere else, which was this widget that you could just very easily place on any website. And a really simple little thing like that, but it was different, and it solved a problem from their competitors. So just little things like that make a massive difference.
That's great. I mean, it also, if the firms use it correctly, okay, they can gain the traction with those new startups, potentially gain new customers potentially, but they could also, if they're clever enough, look to monetize their own documents, couldn't they, without actually having anybody doing anything behind the scenes, if they're
exactly
clever enough about it. So
yeah,
who doesn't want to make money by doing nothing? I know,
yeah. some people, it's good you say that though, because some firms are still, there's maybe people in some departments that, the more, whether they call it the innovation department or the tech team or the solutions team, they say stuff like that. They're like, this could be a revenue generator where we don't need lawyers. This can be an added value, an extra service where we're making money. And I have known people go, well, that's not our business. That's not what we do, and be quite scared of that. So, I think it's the bolder law firms that will do that. And I think, that's the 10% I was talking about. That's the disrupt yourself.
Yeah.
So eventually it's an added value, but you then start to grow that bit and shrink that bit. That's quite interesting.
Yeah. You don't have to have the all-encompassing total solution online necessarily, but if you can make sure that your online tools engage a customer to telephone you to say, well, now complete the last 10% or something by doing this, or or even just rehoning what you do sell to be the advisory bits and the specific advisory bits, and
exactly
the advantages for the customers.
Yeah. There was a nice one that Taylor Wessing put out a couple of years ago, and it was, when the law changed for company directors where you had to disclose, I can't remember exactly what it was, but you had to disclose if you held like more than 50% or something.
Yes, yeah.
And the rules changed. So they built like a chatbot kind of feature for free on their website that said, it just took you through the questions and then said whether or not it applied to you or not. But obviously then, so when people were going to Google and searching, do I need to declare? They were finding that. And then, so that's a good way to get people to their website, that if they then did need to do something, well, I'll phone this law firm that I've just landed on their website.
Yeah. And these tools, we did a show last year sometime where I stepped through how you can use like the Microsoft Cognitive Services and stuff to make a Q&A chatbot and stuff yourself with no code and all that kind of stuff. And these are great. These are tools that you can go and use. They can cost nothing or very small. They're easy to get up and running, and just, you can just push this stuff out and, take those first steps into doing these things. Like you're saying, people are saying that's not our business. That's not what we're into. Well, that's fine. But you might be able to take a first tentative step and just test the water, and see if it's something you want to get involved with and do. And that's really important.
And if you play devil's advocate in that sense and you say that's not my business, it will be somebody else's business, and then which of those two businesses is going to appeal more to the modern age and modern generation of buyers? And my suspicion is that those that enable their advice to be given swifter and using technology in a good way will do better. So
that's great. So Catherine, I wanted, if we try and we don't want to go too long and bore everyone. So how can firms get in contact with you and talk about these things and maybe begin their journey on these trips of document automation and things like that, and what can you help them with?
So on document automation specifically, where I generally get involved is if they've just starting on their journey and need kind of guidance on where to start, what to look at, questions to ask all the providers when they're doing their procurement, how to resource. So I help them prepare the business case and that kind of thing and take them through that journey. Or they've just got it and then they want to kind of do like just a few days where I will work with people within their organization to kind of create the best practice, the process of how they're going to do it as a business as usual thing internally. And then the other time I quite often get called in is where they've been trying to do something for a couple of years and it's not worked. So I come in to do a bit of a project refresh. But yeah, lots of different things. I also still do some automation myself and build stuff. So if they
your hands dirty
don't have, so if they don't have the resource to automate the SPA or the facility agreement or something like that, that's like, because I've done so many of them, I kind of know how to guide people through the automation of those more complex documents. The smaller ones, it's not really worth me doing, and I'd rather teach someone in your organization how to do them so that you can do them and maintain them yourselves. And how to contact me, usual ways: LinkedIn, Twitter.
Anything.
I don't know how we originally. Oh, we spoke at Legal Geek, didn't we? And then we.
Yeah, well, I think we'd seen you on LinkedIn and things like that, and some of the articles you posted and stuff, and then saw you at the Legal Geek conference.
Yeah. So anyway, there's also on the website there's a contact form, but I'm pretty informal, as you can probably tell.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
All the contact details in the notes anyway. So. Yeah,
and I wondered as well. You mentioned it earlier about. The LegalTech in Finland was started as was a female startup and things like that. And I know you're passionate about promoting women in LegalTech and LegalTech and stuff. So is there anyone you want to promote, or who should we look at on Twitter and follow? Is there anyone that you'd suggest? I know that Legal Geek have their Women in Tech mentoring session, and that's works with Eagle Labs and stuff. Is there anyone?
Yeah, it's expanded now actually. So it's we realize that there's a problem not just with enough not having enough diversity in terms of male and female within legal tech, but diversity in general. So that mentor scheme has completely opened up as well. So just trying to make it's like any industry. Actually, legal tech is better than law, as in practicing law, when it comes to having diversity, but we still do need to push it on, because obviously we'll all go further, better, faster with diverse opinions and ideas. I would suggest following Ivy Wong on Twitter. She's operational Ivy, so she runs the Legal Geek mentoring scheme. Dana Denise Smith is someone that very much pushes women in law, and we had a conversation recently because I was saying that I want to help promote women in law tech, and I also invest in startups, and I would be quite happy to, because there's a big disparity in female founded companies and male founded companies getting the VC funding,
the actual investment and funding.
Yeah, and quite often, and that's kind of annoying, because quite often it's better products in my view, but also if you look at any of the data and statistics out there about female founded businesses, generally they're going to perform better. So I'm really interested in why that's happening, why those companies aren't getting the investment. Is it a networking problem? Is it a subconscious bias problem? So, but what I did say as well is I just don't know that many legal tech companies that have been founded by women. No. They just don't seem to, I don't think there's that many out there. And we're looking at, off the top of my head, I can probably think of like 3. So Dana has put together a list, and that's going to be going on the website soon, the Women in Law First 100 Years website, I think soon. So you can actually, if you want to just make sure that from a diversity point of view, when you're looking at procuring document automation or procuring a search tool, that you want to make sure that you're looking at all of those, maybe just check out that list.
That's great.
Thank you for the opportunity to mention that.
No, that's fine. That's right. I said to you earlier, we I don't know whether the podcast will go up before this one or afterwards, but we just had a conversation with Katharina Bissett over in Austria. She founded Nerds of Law over there, and we met her at the Austrian Future Law conference, and that was hosted by and started up by Sophie Martinez as well. So, over in Europe, there's a wealth of people as well that I think need to be highlighted as well. So the more we can do to push people, that's brilliant.
Thank you.
But yeah.
Well, that's terrific. Thanks so much for all your time. And hopefully, as a result, people will get in touch and you'll continue to help all the firms out there who are not currently automating get it. It needs to be done.
And drag everyone into the 21st century.
Thank you for having me. And I also look forward to hopefully speaking next week where you're going to give me a demo of your stuff as well, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to try and get you to have a look at some of the things that we're doing on the, and we're looking at the open source side. So
you need the diversity of input, frankly. So
we're happy to talk to everyone and things.
The more the better.
Brilliant.
Exactly. Well, thanks for that. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.